It's extremely cliche, but it is about the journey. It's about enjoying your time along the way. I find it's really valuable to get different perspectives. Yeah, absolutely. If I don't get a fix on a weekend of getting out on the bikes, it's not good. I mean, maybe it's when you are forced into uncomfortable positions like...
In this Sports and Outdoor Mentors episode, I chat with Richard Leedham, the CEO of Equip Outdoor Technologies, the group that owns both RAB and Lowe Alpine. Richard has had a fantastic career trajectory, starting as a sales rep, spending over 20 years at iconic UK outdoor brand Berghaus, ultimately as the brand president, and is now CEO of Equip. So if you want to learn the secrets of a successful corporate career, get ready for 60 minutes of gold. Richard. So, why the outdoors? What was the kind of starting point to starting in the sports and the outdoor industry? Because initially it was obviously bikes, actually more than the outdoors, right? Your first professional...
Yeah, I think the start was probably even before then, which was going to university and studying in Newcastle in the north of England, which I really enjoyed. But my first time living right at the centre of a reasonable sized city. And the desire to get into the outdoors hit me quite strongly then, having grown up more in the countryside. I got involved in the outdoor club, which was quite large, had several hundred members, and became more and more involved with helping to run that. So looking after the tents after the weekends away and things, sort of 20 Force 10 Vango tents drying in our house at a weekend. And the wonderful aromas that brought, and then my responsibility was making, I think, what you call the merch now for the club, which was assisting in t-shirt printing and making fleeces. This is back in the late 80s when and we were unashamedly ripping off some of the iconic designs that were just coming through at that time in sort of bright pinks and quite colourful fleeces for the first time, and that was my job within that. So it was my first role really in manufacturing in the outdoor industry with t-shirts and products there. And I suppose having graduated and spent a bit of time in blue chip, a couple of organisations through sort of placements over a couple of years. Then I found myself looking for a job. I applied for Berghaus, didn't even get a reply back at the time, and ended up with a sales job for a distributor. Within cycling. So I did that for a few years, which was fantastic. My own company car, able to travel wonderful bits of the north of England and visiting somewhere between sort of 6 and 12 bike retailers every day, selling things like lightweight tubing and group sets and Italian Santini clothing, a real variety of things for a distributor. So that was my initial route into the into outdoors.
Okay. And you said there that you grew up in the countryside. So when you were growing up, did you spend a lot of time in the outdoors as a family with your parents, or?
We did, but I certainly wasn't some sort of prodigious child climber. It was more been forced into walks and not always always liking that. But I think really started to appreciate it when I got a little bit older, and that sort of need, that connection to the outdoors. And I think doing that. And at the time we were doing some pretty varied. We were caving, we were climbing, we were mountain biking, skiing. We ran a ski trip up to Scotland. That's proper skiing up in Scotland, where we would be literally staying in a barn with cows in it. And but through those experiences, some of them quite dangerous, I think, I found my tribe, and it's people I'm still in touch with to this day, and that was sort of a first into the benefits that the outdoors can bring, and and a career in the outdoor industry.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you applied to Berghaus, and didn't get a response. So that's slightly ironic, no, considering that you then spent 23 years with them.
Indeed, yeah. And I think at the time, it was just prior to acquisition by Pentland, going through quite a lot of changes, and they didn't appreciate the newly qualified marketing genius that that wanted to work with them. So I think they had other things on their plate at the time.
I can imagine. So you mentioned there that you studied business with a focus or specialism on marketing.
Yeah.
And then your other than kind of the internships and the placements that you did, the first key role, as you said, was then sales with the bike company. So was that a conscious decision? You're like, okay, you've studied marketing, but now you want to kind of experience things from the sales point of view, or
I wish I could say that, Dan. Retrospectively, yes, it was a great move because you learn so much with the number of different people that you deal with and having to really think on your feet. But at the time, it was early 90s, heading into an industry that was going through quite a tough time in the UK in general. The blue chips I'd been working for just were not recruiting at all, and it came out of needing a job. And then suddenly finding one in an interesting area that I was fascinated with myself in terms of mountain biking, and giving you a company car age 21 was just brilliant. But at the time, I suspect it wasn't what my parents had anticipated, next for a career. But it turns out it was absolutely a wonderful thing to do.
But I'm interested when you look back over your whole career today, is there any part of that time, that career, that was pretty pivotal in terms of where you are today? So leading, obviously, Equip Outdoor Technologies and RAB and Lowe Alpine. So anything that you look back on and think, yeah, that was really somehow a pivotal part of my career?
I think having joined Berghaus and Pentland and going through a sales progression, which was from a territory through to sales management and key account management sort of route. I think the pivotal bit was moving over to running a product category, and the change that brought in terms of more of a global outlook in terms of relationships with suppliers, as well as keeping in touch with customers and sales side of things, much closer to marketing. So I think for me, that was really important move, but grounded in a commercial background as well, which was useful. Although I think a bit at the time a commercial guy coming in and trying to manage designers was probably a bit of a car crash moment, but I learned a lot from that, and it was really important for me, sort of moving forward, to give a much broader perspective, particularly globally.
Was that when you joined Berghaus? Did you have in mind that was something that you wanted to do, or that you were aiming to do, or was it was just kind of somehow opportunistic that the opportunity came up?
Yeah, again, I'd love to say this was pre-planned, but that came on the back of me being very vocal in product meetings as to what I needed for my customers, and that was spotted by, I think, the likes of Tony Wood, who was running the business at the time, and Lewis Grundy, who was product director, and I think they spotted that and said, right, you sort it out then, and made that quite a kind of bold move in a way of moving me into a new role, managing the apparel category, which is a reasonable sizable business.
What were the kind of key success factors? Because that's a phenomenal career progression, a career path, and clearly very few people do that, because very few people get to the top of leading a business. So can you look back and identify what were some of the reasons you think, apart from being a pain in product meetings, but what any other reasons that you think, perhaps that helped me on that path?
It was great, but in the industry, being part of a big organization like that really believed in developing people. So there was quite a bit in there that helped with awareness and business development and self-development. I think from my side, I was always quite curious about the wider business rather than been just staying in my lane. So I think that was probably spotted. And then I was extremely fortunate having various leaders who supported me and pushed me way out of my comfort zone into new roles that I hadn't anticipated, always ahead of when I was ready for it generally.
Okay.
But I think that was on the back of just been spotted as somebody who was quite curious and was interested in the wider business and very keen to succeed.
So it sounds like a bit that if you're saying that those leaders were maybe pushing you out of your comfort zone, and before that you at least felt that you were ready. So it sounds like maybe you weren't maybe consciously ambitious in terms of where you wanted to go. Is that fair, or?
I suspect. I think I was ambitious, but the later moves, some of those bigger moves, were always ahead of when I always felt I was just starting to get an understanding of a role, and then pushed forward into the next one, which is it's just a nice place to be, but could be uncomfortable at times.
What advice would you give to somebody that's maybe in a larger organisation like a Berghaus or Pentland or any of the other, let's say, larger businesses in our industry? What advice would you give people to give them the best opportunity, the best chance to, take those steps and progress in that business?
I would say take every opportunity to understand outside of your core function the wider interconnectivity across the business, and there are often opportunities to do that, and when you can do that, or if it's not something obvious, then try and make it that you're shadowing somebody, or you're joining in different meetings just to further your development, further your understanding, and get a much broader perspective of the business.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it makes complete sense. Yeah, I think retrospectively, I don't know whether people would agree, but probably I had a bit of a similar attitude when I was at Columbia. I joined as a visual merchandiser and left leading the apparel business for Europe, and as you said, was maybe getting involved in things that maybe shouldn't necessarily, but just with the mindset of wanting to improve things and make things better. And you're right, you definitely then you start to see the bigger picture. So I think always the danger is especially in a larger company where there's hundreds, potentially thousands of employees. It's easy to, I think, get a little bit tunnel vision and only thinking about, okay, what moves the dial for me in my role, but actually that ability to step back is really important.
And as long as you're doing that with the right intentions, you will often find that, maybe unbeknownst to you, good leadership will spot that and will spot people doing it, because it's not as common as you might hope. So it just then opportunities may present themselves.
In addition to your professional roles over the years, you've also held several volunteer roles. So you've sat on the board of the OIA in the UK, so the Outdoor Industry Association in the UK. In fact, you are again now in your new role, and you've also sat on the board of the European Outdoor Group. So obviously, in that sense, for those roles, you're giving up your own time, which is clearly limited given the roles that you have and had. So why is that important for you? Why do you feel like you need to contribute to those organisations?
Well, I think initially I was actually quite flattered to be asked, and And I saw that as an opportunity to spend time with competitors and customers in a non-competitive environment, and actually get to know people a little more in a different space. So that was the initial motivation. And I knew there was some really interesting, engaging people on the board already. So that wasn't a difficult decision on both boards. But then as time progressed, I think you realize just how important those roles are in terms of the number of areas where we are non-competitive and we can work together as an industry. And that's pretty exciting stuff, that you're working on much bigger picture stuff outside of your own brand, across multiple areas. And I think over time you realize the value that brings for the industry, but for you as well. So yeah, hence sticking with both of those for quite some years, and being back again with the OIA, which I think we're both heading over to a meeting there tomorrow. So yeah, and what's nice, coming to RAB is that we're very, very supportive of that. Matt's always been supportive as well. And has also sat on both boards, so it's a very nice fit for this business as well. If you to be honest, the truth is, and you can ask this, is that I was probably going through a bit of I can't believe I'm in this job anyway, sort of thing. And am I really? Because when you're not used to operating across the other leaders of various businesses, of which there were quite a few at the time, who were quite reasonable sized hitters, you wonder how you're going to perform in that environment. So it comes back to a theme about doing something that makes you uncomfortable.
Have you ever worked with a external coach or a mentor yourself, in terms of like it being a conscious choice to help you in your development?
Completely, yeah. Yes, very much so. Through Pentland you get quite a lot of development opportunity, and then particularly when I was asked to take on the grand title of president, I was very unsure about that, and I was given a top-notch coach then, a guy called Simon Scott from Coaching Impact, who and he was he spent quite a bit of time with me, helping me, and helping across the team, stepping, because that was quite a big role at quite a time of a lot of change for the business, and I certainly didn't feel ready for that. So having certain members of the team supporting that, and then having regular contact with Simon was incredibly valuable. Yeah.
Excellent. And is that something that you've continued afterwards, or and also have on your side, have you other than maybe in your, let's say, your everyday professional life, acted in that as that kind of mentor or coach to others as well?
Yeah, so on both of those, absolutely. I've got a coach now. So David Hames is works with me. I speak to him at least every month, and it's so valuable. In a leadership role, having somebody else that you can bounce ideas off, who's got a lot of expertise and a different perspective. I find that incredibly valuable, and I hope that I do that for others in the business and beyond as well. And I had some of that formal, some of that informal, but that's absolutely something that we work on here as well. Yeah.
And is that somebody that knows the industry, or it's somebody outside the industry? I mean, because I think some people here like to work with people that understand the kind of context of the industry, but then I think other people more prefer to have somebody with, let's say, an external point of view.
So David was already working with us, and Matt had brought him in earlier. So he's got a reasonable understanding of the business, but he's from outside of the industry.
Okay.
And I find that quite a valuable.
Yeah.
I like to get I spend a lot of time talking, ideas with friends as well on a weekend. When we're out on the bikes or out for a walk or whatever. I find it's really valuable to get different perspectives, and I'm very fortunate. A few of us have known each other for a lot of years, but run various different businesses in size from smaller to multi-billion, and we can sort of draw on different experiences, and I find that really valuable.
Great. So maybe touching on a similar topic then, when you're looking to bring people into Equip here or back in your Berghaus Pentland days, are you looking for people from the industry, or are you open to bringing people from outside of the industry?
I hope we're open to bringing people from outside. It's an exciting industry to be in, and it's expanding. And for it to continue to expand, we'll have to bring in new expertise, and I think we're open to that. Some roles more so than others. Sometimes you just feel you need somebody with some experience who can hit the ground running, and then it will just depend on exactly the context. But this business has grown enormously, and we've brought in a really healthy mix, I hope, of people from various different backgrounds.
And then, do you, in terms of then onboarding and integrating those people from outside, is that something that is particularly considered? Because I think the outdoor industry is in some ways quite special, quite unique, and sometimes I hear of stories of people coming in from outside the industry and struggling to be integrated. Is that something that you've experienced or that you're sensitive to?
With the mountain people, and so there's a whole lot of people doing some pretty out there stuff. I'd like to think we're also very welcoming, and we've got a nice mix across the piece, and our HR team do a fantastic job of bringing people into the business, and you can find your place.
Then after 23 years at Berghaus at Pentland, you stepped away. So what was the plan? What was next for you at that point in time?
Well, I was quite fortunate in that I was a part of that process in designing ourselves out of jobs, and was completely understanding of as to why that was the case. And the next potential step for me was something that would have been a fabulous job across multiple brands, but it wasn't involving pure outdoor. So for me, that I just felt at that stage that wasn't something I wanted to do. So I think we hopefully amicably parted company at that stage. And like I said, I had been working with a coach, and had the opportunity to go through sort of thinking about what is it that you enjoy the most, where are you best suited, and what would you like to try next. So I'd written a few different things down, but headed out with nothing, no specific role in mind. I knew I wanted to work with a small business. I just thought, having been relatively big corporate, it would be really nice to do something, roll your sleeves up and really get into something like that. I was really interested in sustainability, particularly in excess product that we were generating. A lot of that from the right thing to do by that product, and then partly a commercial thinking, this is really high value. A lot of this inventory that we're generating, that's in a tiny percentage that would be faulty, but actually quite a lot of volume in the end. So how could that value be used for better good and be recovered? But then what actually happened is literally the day that I announced that I was leaving, I got a call from Peter Cowgill, who was chief exec at JD at the time, and who said, "I want you to come in here and work with us for a while, and work with the outdoor businesses, because we're looking at buying some outdoor brands." So I had the opportunity to do some of that, also set up a not-for-profit, which was Outdoor Gear for Good, which was taking excess inventory, taking faulty inventory, and trying to work out a process at the time that wasn't too much of that happening. Yeah. and working out a process of how to best recover value for good causes that were industry causes from my knowledge of Outdoor Industry Association, etc. And through that time, I also was introduced to a small startup outdoor business. So I was extremely fortunate in the way that these things all came together.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to work close within retail with Lee and the JD team in there, and have a better understanding of retail side of things. And we got to set up, unfortunately, just as we went into COVID, the not-for-profit, and that still exists. We're just in the process of, I haven't got time to spend on that now, and we're just in the process of gifting that to Youth Adventure Trust, so
great.
they can use that for their fundraising. And then also work with a small startup, which was so I was very fortunate that that these things came together, and I'd actually planned that bit at this stage. And I actually
the plan finally
had a chance to sort of write this down, and it's interesting looking back at that and thinking managed to tick those off. Yeah.
And how was that experience? Because I think that the small brand was Akai, is that correct?
Yeah.
And you initially were in a non-exec role, and then after a couple of years you stepped into the CEO role. So I would imagine that was a heavy contrast of, as you said, working in a reasonably corporate, a large business into a startup, or at least a much smaller business.
Yeah.
So what were the learnings from that?
Well, that was fantastic in terms of stepping from being a sort of not exactly a cosseted world, but a lot done for you in as the grand title of president at Berkhouse into a business with I think four people, but with a brilliant idea. And I knew from all the insight work, because I do like to use data and market insights. And I knew from that, and I knew from my Berghaus experience, it's an incredible opportunity for women's outdoor apparel in particular, and that was unfulfilled. And then to find this business that had grown already to, I think it was literally half £500,000 had just delivered the year before, but realizing they had this fabulous idea. And we built there with some support from me, and a bit of my knowledge, but incredible energy from the founders, and was almost an entirely female team of growing that tenfold and more over that time, which is really exciting. New warehouses, new offices, new websites, new platforms, so everything happening very, very quickly. For me, learning a lot and hopefully contributing something along the way as well to with my experience, and fundamentally realizing what a fabulous idea it was. So that we developed that up until, only a couple of years ago, got investment from growth partner Richard Leedham, who also have Passenger, and so that's hopefully setting up a platform for the next step for Akai.
Great. So a really interesting period for you then, because as you said, so working with a retailer, working with a startup, setting up a not-for-profit, I mean, very productive period in terms of personal development as well.
And that was right through COVID as well. So,
yeah.
So all that happened together. So being in what was already a very fast-growing business, and then trying to anticipate how much of that was unfulfilled market demand versus new demand coming from, as the whole industry experienced, from a whole a world trapped at home, or only able to get out for walks, it was fascinating challenges. Yeah.
And so that positioned you well to take over from Matt to just over a year ago. So obviously now as CEO of Equip, so looking after both the RAB and the Lowe Alpine brands. So I know it's only been a year, but maybe looking back at that first year, what's been maybe the biggest challenge for you, kind of stepping into the role, but also what's been the biggest positive surprise for you?
Well, I was incredibly surprised that this opportunity even came up. So first hearing from, calls from a couple of people to say that Matt was looking at stepping down and to get in touch, I was immediately, it was a huge excitement at the potential. Knowing a little bit about the brand, having first of all competed with it, and then latterly, in my through Outdoor Gear for Good, having been into this business, and in fact probably in this very room, and met with some of the people to talk about what they were doing in terms of sustainability, in terms of product repair, and etc. Which was, I was absolutely blown away. It was about 6-7 years ago, coming into this place and seeing a whole team of people repairing product, and the fact that the business was struggling for power input to the facility to power the amount of wash capacity that's needed, and so all this was going on, some of it behind the scenes at the time, and subsequently I think we've become more and more famous for it. But Matt had clearly invested in that from the start. So back to the point. I was very surprised that this was going to be an opportunity. Very excited about taking that on from the first conversations with Matt. In terms of challenges, it's not the easiest thing for either of us. For Matt, handing over the reins of a business that he has nurtured from almost nothing over 30 years is a really big deal, and he knows every nut and bolt of this business, inside out. So that's, for me coming in new, and for him handing that over, that's not the easiest thing at all. But the opportunity's just been tremendous, because it's a fabulous business, so beautifully positioned, and has not been messed around with at all, across success across so many markets, which is really not easy to achieve. Very famous in certain categories, but with the potential to grow both in terms of category and in terms of market and in terms of marketing. So there was a lot. There's so much has been done, but so much more still to go for. And I think, to answer your question finally, I think what's been the biggest surprise is, and it shouldn't be a surprise, but the quality of people in here. And the sort of energy and the ability to move quickly and get behind things is absolutely tremendous. And so being able to move very quickly, which is what we have done, and that shouldn't have been a surprise given what's already been achieved. But that was really nice to come into here.
So what do you consider your most important task as a leader of a business, but also, as you mentioned, a great team of people?
I think that is about huge surprises, setting the direction. The way you do that is really important, and the way that you try and hear the voices in the room, you make sure that you engage the team in that, but you set clear direction. And then making it meaningful for people. And that can be all sorts of different meanings for lots of different people. Some it's all about, really want to get on and career and can see opportunity. And for other people, they just want to make sure you've given them a stable job for a long term that they can rely on, and you're not messing around with their futures and their jobs. Yeah. So it'll be multiple meanings, but delivering that clarity and then continuing to communicate that, and watching out for when that is being done. Praising when you can see things that are happening in service of that. And also being kind of humble enough to accept when you've got things wrong and you have to course correct a little. But so much of this is about communication. I did the most recent sort of all employee meeting. I put a slide up, and it was a quote from I think attributed to the CEO of LinkedIn, which said, "When you're sick and tired of saying it, they're just starting to hear it. And I think that's really true, that you can be in your little bubble where you think, I need something new to talk about this week, and whereas actually that consistency of setting a direction, setting that strategy, and if that's working, following that through and clearly communicating that and making it meaningful is what's the most important part of my role.
How would you describe your leadership style, your approach to leadership?
I hope collaborative. I absolutely, much as I've worked across elements of the business, I'm in no way an expert. I rely on the functional experts for that, and I need people to speak up, and I need to challenge when I've got things wrong. So I find it quite through a sort of a consultation process whereby several people are involved, and you just get a higher level of buy-in and a much better quality output if that happens. I'm also pretty obsessive about making sure we're using data behind decisions as well, which isn't always the case in the outdoor world. And so I'm a big advocate of improving there, and through my career, particularly when I was running product, just using data-based decisions was just was transformative for what we were achieving at the time, for the sort of levels of growth we were getting. So yeah, I think that's the style, but then not been afraid of making a decision on the back of that, and then sticking with that decision, trying to be fair with people if it's not the bit that they necessarily agreed with, but you have to, you can't then dilute that. It's important that you set a clear direction.
So who are the people that have most influenced you, would you say, over your career?
I've been very fortunate to work with a whole load of very interesting people. I think every single one you'll learn something from, whether that's good or bad. I know that sounds extremely cliched, but I was very fortunate to be supported by Andy Rubin at Pentland, Andy Long, chief exec of Pentland at the time in my in moving to running the Berghaus brand, and then I had Sir Chris Bonington as our non-exec chairman, which is for me, having grown up as a kid. Watching his reports back from various far-flung places in the world, and then be sat opposite him on a boardroom table, and him supporting me in that was just incredible. So very fortunate through that stage. I'm learning a lot right now from Matt. We've just been traveling a couple of weeks together in Asia, and his knowledge of supply chain is just phenomenal. With each supplier you go and visit, they're saying there's nobody quite like him in terms of his understanding and his knowledge and the way he's worked with long-term partners like that. And as I've said, I've had various coaches right up to now that I've learned a lot from. But I think if you're open-minded, you can learn from right from all sorts of people that you're working with, and it's valuable having friends that I'm very fortunate having a set of friends that across very different business sectors that I can also talk things through with as well.
Yeah. It seems to be quite a common thread for you that you have lots of different touch points or access points to people that can either be a sounding board or provide guidance or insight. It seems like that's been quite common and quite important throughout your career.
Yes, I think that was relatively early on, having some, the different sort of psychometric analysis, and realizing that my thinking style is an extroverted thinking style. So I need to talk things through with other people to make sense. So I find that difficult, locked away in my own. I find the whole working from home thing I find quite difficult. But if I am with a team of people, that's the way my mind makes sense of a problem, and can then often then get to where I believe a solution might be. But I really need to hear that talked through first.
Okay, interesting. So what's the most but also least enjoyable part of your job?
The most enjoyable part of my job. I'm very fortunate to have an extremely enjoyable job almost in its entirety. I think, maybe it's when you are forced into uncomfortable positions like presenting to all company or like sitting here right now. Those are probably, on reflection, the things where you've pushed yourself a bit or you're forced to think on your feet. I hope in retrospectively you look back on that and you'll say, yeah, that was interesting, that was enjoyable, that forced me a little bit out of my comfort zone. So it's probably some of those moments, either with the biggest suppliers, with biggest customers, with an all company where you don't know quite what you're gonna get, and you're forced to be quite nimble. I think those are some of the most enjoyable. I don't really have any bits that I don't enjoy. I'm really lucky. There's probably a whole load of people in the company who would say, given all these unanswered emails about X, Y, and Z, these are the bits you don't enjoy and I'm having to deal with now. But there's nothing that immediately springs to mind.
We've talked a lot about your role and what you're doing in your role, and we've talked about the fact that you're also giving up some time to support industry associations and volunteering and leading other charitable efforts as well. But in addition to that, you have a family. You're married. You have 2 kids. So I guess 2 questions. Firstly, do you feel like you're able to find a balance that works for you? And if yes, how? What's your secret, if you have a secret?
Yeah, I suspect the balance that works for me probably wouldn't work for some people. I do find it difficult to switch off, but I don't think I have a problem with that. I just because all the downtime, if you like, is usually spent doing outdoor things, and you will be constantly, why are they wearing that, or what? So I never really get to entirely switch off from work, but I've always been comfortable with that. It's something that I already devote a lot of my time to. So I found that been fortunate being in this industry, and there are so many great people doing good things that it's hard to delineate between work and sort of and switching off time. And I think to help with that is that my wife Kirsty has been extremely understanding. We made that call early on. I think she was probably doing a better job in her career than I was, but we made that call at the time of having kids as to where we were going to split things up, and that's the way that's allowed me some space, and hopefully she's also got a good balance and a good life as well. I mean, the kids are now just left home. Just very recently, second one gone to university. So now she's left with our dog, with a remarkable similarity to your dog.
Absolutely,
with a similar backstory as to she's made up that she had a tough life in Eastern Europe, and now lives a very privileged life. But yeah, so to answer your question, I think we made some deliberate choices there, and that's the way that we've managed it. And outside of work, I don't really have much downtime on holidays. We like very adventurous holidays. We've travelled all over the world, often not quite backpacking, but it certainly isn't luxury hotels all the way through. We really like to get a lot of travel, to get into the outdoors, and that's how I spend my downtime. There's not a lot of sitting by a pool.
Great. So it sounds like, as you said, that one way or another, fundamentally, the outdoors is a critical part of your life. Whether it's professional, whether it's personal, it's almost like the red thread.
Yeah, absolutely. If I don't get a fix on a weekend of getting out on the bike, or or a ski, or out for a run, or it's not good. So very very much so. Yeah.
And so that's interesting. So you can really feel it yourself that if you're not getting that, and let's call that a balance. The balance between working and sitting in meetings, on Teams calls, etc., and spending some time at least outdoors, you can feel that that's negatively impacting you.
Completely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. If a weekend without outdoor activities, or even when I'm staying away during the week, I've got my running kit for the and there'll be a bunch of us heading out at the OIA conference this week. So it's really important.
What would you have wished you'd have known at the start of your career that you know now?
Maybe had a better plan, but
it worked out pretty well.
But because there really wasn't a plan there. But actually, I was very very fortunate that things came together. So it's not a huge regret. So, I think other people could probably do that. Do what I've done in a more considered and more planned route. But looking back, you can piece all these things together, and the benefit of hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Is there any particular challenge or failure that you look back on over your career that you were able to really take some positive learnings from?
I would really have liked to have built Outdoor Gear for Good. I think that had potential. Hopefully that area still has potential to be something on quite a scale, and that's already happening through the greater acceptance of just some of the things that we're doing. We're opening service centres, as we call them, with repair and wash and resale of upcycled and repaired products across the world. We've got one of those in Canada, US, Europe. We've got 2 of those here in the UK now. We're really extending that, but there is so much potential for more of that, particularly in the areas and the only area I feel comfortable in operating, which is in much higher value product, where you can have a long lifespan, great longevity, and the ability to continue to repair, and there's still a lot of value and integrity in that product. But I think that I didn't build it to the scale I wanted to. I think calls to a learning for me around the need to be working in a larger team, and my thinking style, and my so I think I learned from that. I'm really delighted that some of those learnings I'm now applying on a much bigger scale and across a global company. And that's getting a lot of excitement in this place, and it's not only the right thing to do; it's good business in every way. So I think this business is already leading there, and I think that I know there's a lot more that we're going to do. So it's not like that was time wasted, but I would have liked to have been able to build that all myself to a greater degree. But I think having recognised learned a little bit more about myself along the way, and pivoted accordingly.
Yeah. So looking ahead to the next 5 years or so, what do you see as some of the big challenges as an industry that we face?
These are some of the things that we talk about in the business and at board. Certainly staying relevant. there's, I've been through, as I've outlined, an amazing career through just an incredible growth of outdoor industry from almost nothing, from almost Army and Navy type product, through to this incredible business it is today. But how do we stay relevant for the next generation? And that is certainly different. So there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot we've got to do about bringing the right people into the business and not be set in our ways. So I think that's something that's certainly very much on our minds. And the other part, which is an inevitable theme, is around sustainability. We're fortunate that this business, and as I said, Matt has invested in that many years ago, and we've got incredible team with Debbie leading that's kept us, I think, ahead of the game. But we're trying to look out for quite some way ahead, and it's truly terrifying, the legislation and things that are coming through. I think we're in a good position, as I said, in that we're generating high value, high integrity products. But even then, some of the regulations that are likely to come our way are going to be pretty challenging. So keeping on top of that is going to keep us on our toes as well. But I am positive over the things that we're currently putting in place that should enable us to navigate that.
Great. Yeah, I think that it's really interesting you mentioned the relevance, because I think whether it's relevance or accessibility, I think as an industry we have I think it used to be an opportunity. I feel like it starts to become more of a necessity in terms of if the industry wants to continue developing and grow, we need to do a better job of being relevant to a broader range of consumer, because we all know, and you've very clearly articulated the benefit of spending time outdoors to you, and we all know that that's the case for everybody. But I think we're still in reality we're still quite an exclusive industry, and still the majority of people do not spend time in the outdoors. And I think that's such a opportunity, but like I said, even beyond opportunity, I think it's going to be a necessity. Otherwise, we're going to get attacked, is maybe too a dramatic word, but attacked from other industries that are already maybe connecting with that consumer in other ways and can convert them that way. So it's really interesting you say relevance. I think that's it's super important. Indeed. And something that we're not the best at, I would say. I think we're good at being relevant to ourselves and not so good at being relevant to outside of that kind of core community.
Yes, yeah. I think the importance of bringing in other perspectives and challenge to our cozy little world. Yeah.
Favorite bit of kit? So what's that one bit of kit that you can't do without, and it can't be anything in this room or in this building, I'm afraid. Yeah. That's too easy.
My dangerous looking eyesight. For me, that would actually be maps. And at home, I've got a room where I love those, the 3D maps you can buy, the sort of the ones with the Alps and the Lake District in the UK and Mont Blanc, etc. And I love those things, just as far as planning, whether that's skiing or hiking, cycling, whatever. And so I love maps in all sorts of forms. In fact, when many years ago, I think when Nick Giles at Ordnance Survey showed me have you seen the sort of 3D mapping that they can do on your phone? When that first came out, I was absolutely blown away, and now love things like the Strava run-throughs that you can, the flybys that you can do. I just love all of that in terms of planning adventures and then reliving some of those things and the way that's moved on. I think that will be my can't do without, even through back to the old school paper maps as well. Yeah. So I think that's my favourite piece of kit.
That's a good one. So if you could give future leaders of the sports and outdoor industry 3 pieces of advice, what would you give? What would you share?
treat your business like it's your own. Okay, so I think that was my approach all the way through. And it just was logical to me. Treat this as if this is your money. Treat this as if you're going out there and this really counts. And that just felt like an obvious way of approaching things. But it's a good thing to stand by. That no matter what, if you're doing this for the right reasons and aligned with the business, then even when you're pushing things and testing things, you can always stand by. You're doing it as if this was your own business. I think that's quite a good, and that will mean that you are getting involved across other parts. Some of the things that we've spoken about. Getting involved across the organisation. So that's one. Treat the business as if it's your own. I think the second one is do something that makes you uncomfortable every day, which is an old piece of advice, but hence why I'm sitting here. But that's again is something that you've got. I think you were interviewing earlier one of our team, and been put into this sort of situation, or taking a presenter, or with a major customer, or just if you've got the opportunity to do something out there, even if you feel uncomfortable about doing it, try it, test yourself, push yourself. You learn a lot when you're in that zone. And then the third thing is try to understand yourself, and try to understand, particularly when you're getting frustrated about the way people are with you, understand a little bit about you, your thinking style, the way you operate, and you can do that. That doesn't need to be huge coaching sessions and enormously expensive. I did one of those recently, which just cost £200. I just paid for that myself, because I'd seen somebody else who was the founder at Akai had done this, and I just thought there was such valuable insight in that. I thought, I want to do that one for me. I've not seen this one before. So you can do that relatively low cost, and it just gives you a really good understanding of the way you work with people, and the way you fit in, and where you can add value. Yeah. So I think I'm very much linked to coaching, and seeking out that sort of coaching and mentoring and understanding of the way that you work. So I think those are the three for me.
The what you did recently, that was like a behavioural kind of personality type test.
Yeah, Kasia, the founder at Akai, she'd done this work with a coach. I saw it. I thought, oh wow, that's amazing. This is really insightful. And I got in touch with the coach, and she said, "Well, you can just do it yourself. It's £200." I was like, "Well, I'll just pay for that." Yeah. I'll just do that myself, because I've never seen this particular angle before. It was very different, and we work with a different system here that was part of my recruitment process. The way we use that, so we have a really good understanding of people and the fit within the team, and the way that you talked earlier about onboarding, and just the way you best do that fits with that style and the style of other people, and it just helps us all. And we use this as a board, and that just helps us all in our discussions and our understanding, and hopefully helps. It doesn't stop conflict, but it helps you understand the different perspectives and different styles.
It's interesting, because it's something that I use a lot in my day job in recruitment, and I always share it with all candidates that do it afterwards, and kind of walk through them, because as you said, I'm the same. I love that sort of thing, and I think sometimes it, but you need to kind of see it almost on black and white. Okay, so if today was your last day and you were going to retire, no more professional life for Richard, what would your message be to the team here?
Well, there's a large golden Bengal tiger in my office that was gifted to us from a Bangladesh supplier very kindly recently. So I think they'd all be so busy fighting over who got that everybody would just be completely unaware that I'd slipped out the building. But I think what would the message be? We've got a really good plan here. It's pretty stretching, but we're making really great progress, and so I think my message would be continue with that, continue to learn from that, continue to modify that, achieve it, but particularly enjoy it along the way. In my experience, it's absolutely not about the end moment when everything it's extremely cliche, but it is about the journey. It's about enjoying your time along the way. So I think that would be my message to the team.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Richard, for your time. You've been very, very open, and I think at least I very much appreciate that, and I'm sure the audience will as well. So yeah, thanks for the time and for sharing, and congrats for the next many years here at Equip.
Thanks, Dan.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Please ensure you click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss a new episode. And if you're interested in what else we're doing, please make sure to follow us on LinkedIn. I'm Dan Trapp, and you've been listening to Sports and Outdoor Mentors.